everybody, welcome to the October episode of Times Square Today, the official podcast of the Times Square Alliance. I'm Dave Mignano here on another beautiful day in the middle of Times Square, the crossroads of the world. It's a beautiful fall day, and of course, I am here with the esteemed president of the Times Square Alliance, Mr. Tom Harris. Tom, how are you today?
I'm doing great, David. It's always great to be in Times Square, and today is no exception.
Now, we've had so much good luck with these shows. The weather has been perfect every single time, and it just shows, listen, we can't control the weather. You guys can't control the weather, but for the most part, it's such an amazing opportunity to be down here and experience everything going on in Times Square. And Tom, let's just jump right into it, because we have a jam-packed show today with an amazing, amazing guest, which we'll get to in a few minutes. But talking about people coming through Times Square, the numbers have been increasing exponentially. When we first started this show, you guys were just talking about you had just crossed over a single day of 200,000 people coming through. Now every day is crossing 200,000 people with a new record high since the pandemic took place. So Tom, give us some more details about the numbers.
So Broadway is back, and as we expected, so are the people. So the other night we had almost 275,000 people walk through Times Square, and it has been fantastic. There's energy, it is alive. You can feel the pulse of Times Square, and it's certainly, we are looking forward to those numbers continuing and more shows opening up.
Yeah, and again, I work on the east side of Manhattan typically, so I walk from 42nd and 3rd over to the Port Authority bus terminal on 42nd and 8th.
David, we're not going to hold that against you. Today, as far as I'm concerned, you work in Times Square.
Well, today I do.
That's
right now
right.
I do. But as I'm walking to the bus terminal, you know, obviously I have to walk through Times Square, past 42nd and 7th and Broadway, the epitome of Times Square in a large part.
And the best part of your commute.
The best part of my commute, 100%. But as I look down the canyon, it's busy. And I'm talking about, I may leave work sometimes. I work in hotels, guys, so my hours are varied. I may leave at 5 p.m., I may leave at 8 p.m., I may walk past at 11 p.m. Things are happening. People are here enjoying themselves. It's a great environment. There's been a time or two, Tom, I'm not going to lie to you, I've had some time before my bus was leaving. I've actually walked up and down the plaza because I want to just be involved in the energy. It's such a positive feeling to be involved. So to know that so many people are back, so many things are happening, it's nice for myself to know that. And listen, guys, if you missed our previous shows, it's not Tom and his team taking a guess on how many people come through. They're not looking out their window over on my left shoulder saying, hey, that looks like about 275,000 people. No. There are counters on the buildings getting accurate readings. So you know these numbers are real. You know it's accurate. And it's just an amazing thing to experience, especially with Broadway reopening pretty recently last month. And that goes into kind of the first thing I want to talk about, the show that the Times Square Alliance put on to kind of welcome Broadway back. Curtains up.
Curtain up. So we had a great partnership, and that's one of the things that we do. We have these strategic partnerships. In this instance, we partnered with the Broadway League, with Playbill and the Times Square Alliance. We got together and we put on a 3-day performance to celebrate the return of Times Square, and it was fantastic. It culminated with a show last Sunday with 22 performances. And let me tell you, this place was packed and everyone had a great time.
And it's not, listen guys, we're not talking about that Tom and his team blocked off a little section of Times Square and there were people just on the ground. No, there was a full-on production, a stage, a sound stage, huge speakers, lighting equipment. You know, go on the Times Square Alliance Instagram, go on their website, check it out, Times Square NYC for Instagram, tsq.org for the website. You'll see the photos. You'll see the videos. This was an official, I mean, for most other places in the world, this was a concert. This was a full-on concert, and we just popped it up in Times Square for 3 days. It's just an amazing achievement you guys did. Now, you guys did that with the Jimmy Awards reunion concert, which is what brought it together. Jelani Aladdin is the one who hosted it. And basically, it's bringing together the alumni of the Jimmy Awards National High School Musical Theater Program. So it was obviously benefiting a great cause. People got to come through Times Square and see it. And of course, Tom, as we talk about, it's an amazing experience you can get nowhere else, and you don't have to pay a single dollar for it. You just show up and experience world-class production. So Tom, how did this all come together?
So about 5 months ago, 6 months ago, we knew Broadway was coming back. We weren't sure when it was going to come back. We weren't sure if it was going to all come back at once or it was going to come back slowly. But we wanted to do something to celebrate that. So we partnered with Playbill, that produces the trade magazine that everyone gets when they go to a Broadway play. And we partnered with the Broadway League that really manages all of the producers and all of the shows and really is the promoter for the Broadway community. And we got together and thought about what we could do, what seemed right given the way Broadway was going to come back. And we came up with this 3-day experience where we had Broadway sing-alongs, we had Broadway experiences, we had the Jimmy Award, we had Viva Broadway, Black on Broadway celebrations of the different components of Broadway, and it was really a fantastic event over the 3 days, and a lot of people came out. We saw a lot of buzz on Broadway, and it just celebrated Broadway, it celebrated Times Square, and it celebrated New York City.
Love it, love it. Well, something else happened in the last month involving Broadway that's pretty well known. It's pretty big for the Broadway community, pretty big for people that are interested in the theater, and honestly, some people that aren't in the theater, they just like this as well. And that was, Tom, the Tony Awards were back. Now, if you're not familiar with the Tony Awards, not sure where you're living, but it's basically the Oscars for the theater production for Broadway. It's an amazing, amazing event. It was back. Took a year off last year with COVID, if I'm not mistaken, but it was back this year at the Winter Garden Theater right here in Times Square, celebrating the achievements of everybody in the Broadway community, the best of the best in the Broadway community, and it was right here in Times Square. So, Tom, how was that having the back? I understand that that's something that's probably run very independently of the Times Square Alliance, but it still involves Times Square.
So it was exciting to have them back. It was exciting because it celebrated a lot of the great work and really a community that came together throughout the pandemic and helped each other out. And now it's time for us to help them out by going to those shows and really connecting with our Broadway experiences. But the Tonys were in Times Square, which was something different. They had always been in venues on the outskirts of Times Square, and it was really nice and exciting to have them in Times Square for this year's event.
Love it, love it. And now, guys, we're going to be talking about how to access these Broadway shows, because Tom is right. We need to help support the Broadway community who was very devastated by the COVID-19 pandemic. Now is the time to help bring it back. And we're going to have some people from the TDF, the Theater Development Fund, on to talk about how the TKTS booth is helping do that. We'll get to that in a little bit, because I want to talk about the Met Opera, which had a beautiful live viewing, again free, here in Times Square of their first performance back. So they were showing the Met Opera show on these massive, massive screens for all to see. Like, how did that come together? What was that like?
So the Met Opera and the Times Square Alliance, it's probably a 10 or 12 year partnership where we've gotten together with them, and we brought the opera to everyone. This is an event that it's free, it's in Times Square, it's open to all, and you can come out, sit in Times Square under the stars, under the bright lights, and watch the Met Opera performance on the screens. So it was nice to have the opening in Times Square yet again.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. And the first show that they had on screen was Fire Shut Up in My Bones by Terrence Blanchard. And what's cool about this is Terrence is the first Black composer to have his opera played at the Met Opera, and of course via the screens in extension Times Square. So it's really a historical moment, right? That this is the first African American to have his opera played at the Met Opera. So it's historical, it's significant, and it was experienced not only by people just at the Met Opera, but everybody here in Times Square, which is about a couple thousand people that watched this happen. But it kind of calls to the call for diversity within Broadway as a whole, and that's coming back from the pandemic. There is a lot of this increased diversity that we're seeing. I want to kind of list off some statistics here, but 7 new shows are coming, Tom, that are written by Black playwrights.
Yes.
One of them by 4 Black women playwrights, which is just unbelievably awesome to hear. Shows you want to see. So give us some of the examples, Tom, of the shows that are in Broadway currently that people can come see that are written by some of these great African-American playwrights.
Passover, Lackawanna Blues, Chicken and Biscuits, Thoughts of a Colored Man, Trouble in Mind, Clyde's, and Skeleton Crew. And Broadway is really trying to celebrate its diversity. It's always been diverse. I don't know that it was always celebrated as such a diverse community. And it's really nice that we're at a point in time where we are celebrating and leaning into our diversity. And it's our differences that make us special.
Especially here in New York City, right? I mean, what area of the world is more diverse than this island of Manhattan, and then obviously New York City as an extension of the other 4 outer boroughs?
The thing about Broadway is that it allows us to really look at things from different perspectives. It brings us together. It drives our humanity. It really is an incredible part of New York. It's what separates New York from a lot of other cities.
Absolutely, 100%. And the good thing about this month, Tom, now again, last month, September 14th, Broadway officially reopened with a couple of shows here and there. But by the end of this month, October, we're going to have 28 full shows back in action. Now, Tom, I'm not going to ask you to list them all off because it's a long list of shows.
Yes.
But give us a couple of the shows that are coming back and where we can find the full list.
So first, I'm going to start off with the full list because I don't want to shortchange anyone. You could go to our website, the Times Square Alliance's website, tsq.org. But a couple of the shows, Ain't Too Proud, Aladdin, The Lion King, Phantom of the Opera, Waitress, Wicked, to name a few, Come From Away, Girl from North Country. There are so many here that I'm looking forward. I'm going to get a little box and start to check them off as I go see them.
Now, Tom, there's so many great shows we just talked about that are opening. But what if you want to come out to Times Square? You don't have a specific show you want to see. You just want to go see a show. You want to see a production. Well, that's where the amazing TKTS booth comes in play. Now, of course, you probably can figure it out. It stands for tickets. But it's also run by the Theater Development Fund, and guess what? We are right here next to the Red Steps. We talk about it all the time. It's about 75 feet right behind me. It is right in the center of Times Square. You can see over my right shoulder, the booth is right there. It has some show times. You can walk right up, see what's playing, get online, get some discounted tickets. This is an amazing, amazing program, and we are very honored, Tom, to have the Executive Director of the Theater Development Fund here, Miss Tori Bailey. Tori, thank you for joining us.
It's lovely to be here. I'm really delighted to be here. CDF and the Times Square Alliance have a very special relationship. Tom and I have been friends, as they say in New York. We go back a long time, and it's just great to be here. And it's great to be out in Times Square on a beautiful fall day.
Oh, it's great. I mean, the day, as we said at the top of the show, could not be more perfect. It is typical end of September, October weather, not a cloud in the sky. And it's great for me to meet you because I've taken advantage of TKTS before. My wife is a big Broadway fan. We love coming to shows. We live locally, so we don't necessarily come with a plan of who to see. We just come out, get in line, find some discounted tickets.
That's absolutely one of the things that's great about the booth is exactly what you're talking about, is it gives you, if you know you want to go see a show, which is, after all, one of the things that makes New York so special, you can come to the booth and you can see what we have and you can pick the show. And not only do we have a variety of shows, but we have our patron service reps who can help folks decide what to see. Because, you know, a lot of people who don't go to the theater often or who haven't been to Broadway, they don't necessarily know what they want. They don't know what all the shows are. They don't know what they're about. Or they don't know, can I take my 10-year-old? Can I take my 14-year-old? And we help provide answers to that. And of course, you know, everyone likes to know what other people like them think. And so the booth is also, when you watch the line, people tend to find other people and say, have you heard of that show? Did you like that show? Do you think I would like that show? And so there's a whole kind of community that builds in the course of the line.
So, Tori, some people have said that Broadway, the return of Broadway was what brought Times Square back. You and I both know that it's really the reopening of the TKTS booth that shows that we are back, and true New Yorkers know that that's where you come. Why is TKTS so important to the Broadway community?
I think it's important for a lot of reasons. I think, you know, one of the things that's true for the booth is, you know, a production decides when they want to send tickets. And obviously, if a production is doing really, really well and there's high demand, they don't have to send tickets right away because the booth is discounted tickets. Most of the tickets are 50% off. And 50% off, depending on where the seat is in the theater, can mean $40, $50. It can mean $90. But so what the booth does that matters so much to the Broadway community is when shows are getting into what I would call their middle age, right? The booth helps keep those shows running because it provides sales at a price point that people can afford. And so, in essence, the TKTS booth supports the shows, which is supporting jobs. And you talk to, everybody thinks about Broadway and they think about the actors, they think about the stars, but you and I know that for every 10 people on stage, there's 30, 40 people backstage and out front. They're the ushers, they're the stagehands, they're the wardrobe people, and those people view the booth as central to their livelihood. And in a situation that we're in right now, where the industry is coming back after a pandemic, after an unprecedented shutdown, we need every arrow, that we need all of our tools to help get people to the theater, and the booth being open again says Broadway is open.
I agree. And what people might not know is they see the TKTS booth as just ticket sales, a great affordable way to see Broadway. What do those sales help you support?
Yeah, that's a great question. TDF believes that everyone should have access to the performing arts, and we act on that in 3 ways. We provide access through tickets, we build communities, and we support the people who make theater. And the booth is one of the ways we provide access, but we have a host of other programs as well. We have a membership program, we have an arts and education program where we bring 10,000 New York City high school kids to the theater. And the booth, there's a modest service charge relative to any other service charge, and the booth, after it's paid its costs, any surplus revenue helps pay for those programs. All of the ticket price goes to the producers. A lot of people think like we split the ticket. We don't. All of the ticket goes to the shows, but the service charge pays to run this, and then whatever is left helps support our other programs.
And even with that service charge, you're still getting the Broadway experience at a deeply discounted price.
The service charge is lower than any other, and you can walk away having all in paid $65 for a ticket or $130 for the 2 of you, and that's when you. I think part of the challenge for Broadway is that people think ticket prices are $200 a piece, $300 a piece, and not everyone can swing that. Or even if you can, you swing that for a special event.
Right.
A birthday that ends in a 0 or a 5, you might swing for full price, but you want the experience of going more than once every 5 years, and this makes that possible.
Yes, and you're also paying it forward by allowing the next generation
Absolutely.
of Broadway viewers to get the exposure to Broadway.
Absolutely. So it's great, and it's also, I think, part of Times Square, and you and I know this. What was so important, when the first TKTS booth opened 50 plus years ago, Times Square was in pretty challenging shape, and one of the reasons for the booth was the theater community really wanted to put legitimate trade back in Times Square, right? And so the half-price ticket booth, which actually was not a new idea because years before that, there was Gray's Drugstore somewhere down there, and at the soda fountain at Gray's Drugstore, people who knew New York knew that if you went down half hour before show, you could get a half-price ticket. So the booth actually came from that, I think, but the booth was part of what started the Renaissance in Times Square, and this structure, the Red Steps, was kind of the capstone, and it provides a gathering place in New York City for folks to come, and sits over the booth. So it kind of marries Times Square as a gathering point, Times Square as the crossroads of the world, with Broadway. And that's really exciting, and that's what I love about this thing here. So
I know we're trying to look forward, but if you look back a little bit, what were some of the greatest challenges over the last 18 months?
I think the hardest thing, there were 2 things. One was we didn't know when it would end, and I think the uncertainty about how long it would go on was really difficult. And if you were, I say this with all the affection in the world, but if you're a lawyer, your work pivoted, you were online, you were on Zoom, but you were doing what you do. for people in the theater, we weren't doing what we do. And all of a sudden, everything that we've done all our life came to a halt. You didn't know when it would come back. And at least for me personally, the theater is what gives me sustenance. And so at a really down time, I also didn't have that thing that makes me happier. And so it was a tough time, but as you said, I really I think we have to acknowledge what we've been through and move forward. And I do think that going to the theater is part of how people are going to move forward, and I think it's part of how people are going to heal. I mean, the act of coming together, sitting in a theater, being with other people, realizing that it's safe. I mean, Broadway, the rules are so strict. You have to be masked and vaccinated. And backstage, the rules are rigorous. So I think we need that collective experience.
Broadway has always driven our economy, and I believe that through this pandemic we realized that it was so necessary to drive our humanity.
Yeah.
And we have truly missed that, and
yeah.
I'm so happy it's back.
No, and you're right. I mean, I like to say, I think during the pandemic, you became very mindful of your own personal health. You became mindful of putting food on the table and a roof over your head. And now as we begin to emerge, we have to be mindful of the other things that feed us. And going to the theater is one of the other things that feed us, and now there's some space for that. So I'm delighted that we're here to make sure that people who can't afford a full price ticket or don't know what they want to see have access and a way to get to the theater.
I think that's one of the coolest things about the TKTS booth is what you just said, right? Aside from the affordability aspect of it, right? Most people across the country, most people across the world know the big shows. They know Aladdin, they know The Lion King, they know Chicago, they know the Book of Mormon, but there's so many other shows here that don't have as much maybe promotion or as much name value to people that don't live in New York City. And the TKTS booth gives people the opportunity to be exposed to those shows.
Yeah, absolutely.
And have experiences they would not have previously had. Shows that are just as good as any of the main name shows.
Right.
That people may actually enjoy better depending on their taste.
Yeah, the shows that aren't branded as strongly, they find out about them, and I like to think that maybe it means that when they go back home to wherever they are from, it means they might be more adventurous as a theater goer in their community.
Yeah.
Which is, I mean, the other thing that's exciting and is that it's such a wide-ranging group of people, and I think one of the things we're all feeling is we're really ready to welcome visitors from other countries.
Yes.
And we're now that's an example of something we didn't know when that would happen, and now we know that come November they're saying we're going to be open again in a way that New York City, it's in our blood to be that open.
Yes.
Right? That's who we are in New York. And so I'm excited for that, and I think that'll be just another big step forward when you start hearing a whole lot of foreign languages here in the middle of Duffy Square.
Yeah, and you put a great point about, the line at the TKTS booth. We talked on the show previously, Tom, about how Times Square is one large community. Whether it be people from the local market, whether it be people internationally, whether it be people from other parts of the U.S., they all come together into these few streets and become a community. And that line, to me, being in the middle of Times Square, kind of is the embodiment of that. Because I can imagine, and I've seen that line get pretty long, and that's a good thing.
It's a good thing.
I can imagine within that line are people from all different countries, speaking all different languages, and as you said, almost exposing each other.
Yeah, they're having conversations.
To different opportunities. And I think that's such an embodiment of what New York City is as a whole, is coming to a one singular place, but being able to be exposed to the entire world.
Yeah.
And the TKTS booth line does that. And the cool thing about TKTS, again, I've started coming to New York City on my own probably around 2008. That's when I got old enough. So TKTS was around pretty much since the entire time I was here. But it's been around, as you said, Tori, for 50 years.
Early 70s.
And its official capacity, and it has its roots dating back to the 1800s, which is pretty amazing to think about that, discounted tickets and exposure to Broadway has been such an influential part of New York City that we're talking about over 100 years old.
Well, I think from the beginning of time, with the theater, there has been the people who produce the theater have, on the one hand, they want to make sure that they make as much money as they need so they can do the next show. And there's also a desire to get people in who can't necessarily afford that, which is why, you look at the Globe Theater, you look at Shakespeare, and the ground was the groundlings, and, so those folks didn't pay, they stood.
Yeah.
And then you had the boxes, and it was two completely different groups, but both people were there. And in fact, from a geeky theater history point of view, the fact that you had both of those communities in one place is why, when you look at Shakespeare's plays, he had to write for both of those communities. So you have certain kinds of writing in some of it, and then you have moments of very broad humor or whatever, and that's playing to the groundlings. But you have all of that put together.
That's actually really interesting. I never thought about that, but that's a really interesting thing.
Yeah, and it's always been a tension. So there have been ways to get less expensive tickets in New York City, probably as long as there have been
shows,
plays in New York City.
But you don't get the same experience as coming to Times Square, as standing in line.
Absolutely.
It's a place to see and be seen.
No, absolutely.
And it truly is a twofer. You get to come, you get to experience Times Square, you get to experience a show before the show.
That's right. That's right.
You get to see what I call the greatest free show.
Free show, and it's energizing. Let's not kid ourselves. You get great energy, and you're then, and if you keep your eyes open, you also like to see the people you're going to see on stage going to work.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they're all around.
Yep.
Just like us. They're getting off the train and they're going to their backstage door. And so you see a lot if you keep your eyes open.
Absolutely. Now, Tom, to your point about that, right, the TKTS booth is an economic driver for Times Square as a whole, because people that are coming to the booth, people that are standing in line, they're also shopping in the stores, they're having dinner or lunch at the restaurants before or after the show. So what has been the partnership been like between the Times Square Alliance and TDF? How have you guys come together to work in such harmony?
So I think the greatest example of that is the red steps.
Right
the steps. And when I started here in 2008, this was still under construction, and I will say that this was a game changer. This created a place in the midst of two streets that crossed each other with a bunch of signs. So this was the first place for people to come and actually grow roots and experience all that was going on around them. And what I would say is that the partnership with TDF and the TKTS booth are what laid the groundwork for the pedestrian plazas and for the really reemergence of Times Square.
Yeah, I think that's true. The first step was the design competition. Before I got to TDF, there was a design competition for a new booth that was part of the Millennial Celebration, right? And so a winner was selected, and there was no obligation to build it, but it was such an exciting design that TDF felt it was important to go forward and build it. But very shortly after we started that exploration, Tom's predecessor at the Alliance, Tim Tompkins, came to us and said, Tim saw that the Alliance, Tim and the board saw that the new booth could actually be part of a larger project that created streetscape space in Times Square and made it much more pedestrian friendly. And that wasn't TDF's mission, that was the Alliance's mission. And so really, this project married the missions of the two organizations. Ours was to build the booth, modernize it, allow us to take credit cards, a whole bunch. Because we were in a construction trailer, so it was to be, after 40, however, was to become permanent. And the Alliance's was to make Times Square a more accessible, friendly destination where you could stay longer. And I remember Tim at one point said that we were building the Spanish Steps of the United States, right? And at the time I was like, okay, that's poetic. But then I live in Brooklyn. I live very near the Brooklyn Museum, and they just had reopened the new facade to the Brooklyn Museum, and there are steps. And I remember standing there, it was in the middle of the construction, right? And I looked at those steps and I thought, that's what we're doing, right? And I remember going back and saying, Tim, I think you were right. So, but it really was for the two organizations. We had and we worked in tandem, and we worked really well together. And this was a complicated project because this is architecturally very complicated, and so we did it together.
And we could do a whole show on the red steps, but these truly were the steps of dreams, because we showed that when we built it, they came.
Yeah.
And it really was the beginning of a new Times Square.
We should do that. We should get some people and do that sometime, because that's fun.
I was actually just thinking as you were talking about it, Tori, that there is a show in itself of the steps, the development, the architectural structure, but also the development of Times Square, and how this, to your point, Tom, is kind of the beginning of everything we see now.
Actually, I would put it differently. This was the capstone.
Okay.
Right, because all these buildings came back and all these businesses came back, but what hadn't happened was any allowance or service for the fact that there were so many more people now. And so this was the last step, because this was the step that acknowledged theater on the ground.
Yeah. And
it was the step that said, okay, we have to figure out what to do with all the people who are now working here and coming here because it's safe and a fun place to be. We needed all that to get to this.
The first 10 years of the Alliance's history, we spent trying to solve the problem of making Times Square clean and safe.
Right.
And then after 10 years, our biggest problem became that there were so many people, there was no place for them to go.
Because you had done that so well? Yeah. That suddenly it was really crowded. And
there's totally a show in that. I mean, we need to do something in that town. So we'll partner on that, Tori. You're going to have to come rejoin us for that show.
We'll get some other folks, too.
Yes. That's going to be a special edition, extended type of episode. But I want to talk to you about TDF real quick before we let you go, because we focused on TKTS, but that's part of the overall Theater Development Fund, which you are the executive director of. So give us some information about TDF. What is the mission? What do you guys focus on? How does it all come together?
Our mission is really to make sure that everyone has access to the performing arts. Not everyone, once they've tried the performing arts, is necessarily going to become a theater fan, but everybody needs to try it. Everybody needs access to it. Not only on Broadway, which is what we're talking about here, but all through the city. And we do that, as we talked about, affordable tickets, but we are committed to building audiences for the future. So we work with New York City high school students, about 10 pre-pandemic, and we'll get back to it, about 10,000 high school students a year, where we're in the classroom and bring them to the theater. We have a whole host of accessibility programs for people with who are differently abled, people with disabilities. We do open captioning, we do sign interpreting. We have a series, we arrange a series of Broadway performances through the course of the year for families on the autism spectrum, with kids on the autism spectrum. Sensory family performances. The whole house is for folks who have family members on the spectrum. We have a program, we work with veterans. So there are a whole bunch of different ways that we work to make sure that people have access, that people, you can need financial help, as in I can't afford a full price ticket. You can need a service, as in I'm blind or have low vision and I need audio description. You can need, I don't really know about the theater. I don't know how to buy a ticket. I don't know how to get there. And that we address through our education program, and we also address it with a whole bunch of content online. We have a costume collection at Kaufman Astoria Studios in Queens with over 80,000 clothes that we rent to nonprofits around the country, making sure that theaters all over the country are doing really good productions, which then means the people who see them want to go see more. So there's just a whole, but all of it is geared towards this idea that everyone should have the opportunity to go to the performing arts, and that the performing arts are part of what sustain us as a society.
I love that. And it's an important thing that sometimes a lot of people probably don't think about, that there are people that need assistance getting into the theater for various reasons.
Well, and actually, once you start talking about it, what happens, unfortunately, is it's not that people don't think about it, it's that people decide once something, a partner becomes disabled, or you develop Parkinson's, or you have, because we work with people with mobility issues, or you have hearing loss, you decide, oh, this is something I can't do anymore. as opposed to, no, I can still do this. I just need to find the place that will support me in doing this. Right. So that's I think that's some of the kind of letters that I like the most are people who say, we thought we could not, a couple, we thought we could not share this together anymore, but we still can because of this program.
I love that.
So it's that kind of thing.
So how can people, learn more about TDF?
www.tdf.org.
Pretty simple.
That's where you find us.
Pretty simple. So if they reach out to you, that's for anybody that wants to be involved, whether they need assistance, whether they want to contribute, they can all find information there.
And contributions are a huge part of what keeps us going, small and large. And if they want to know about for the booth, they download the TKTS app, because that tells you every day what we have on sale that day. So you can look at what's there and decide, that stuff is interesting to me, I'll go out and buy a ticket. But also, as you said, even if you don't think there's something interesting for you, there usually is.
And you guys have people there to help guide
make those
people
choices
in the right direction. So I love it. It's a full, well-rounded experience, the way that you guys can get involved with Broadway. You guys can get involved with Times Square. There's really nothing to lose by downloading the TKTS app and just checking it out, seeing what's happening.
See what's there.
If you live locally, you may not have any plans for the night. Just flip that on. Hey, great show I want to see at 7 o'clock. Let me go shoot up to Times Square, have a nice dinner, a nice show, and head back home. It's just wonderful. So, Tori, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Tom, any last statements from yourself?
No, just thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. And the Times Square Alliance is an extraordinary organization, and a huge part of what has brought Times Square this far, and a huge part of how we come back from what has been a challenging couple of years.
Yes, just to say the least.
To say the least.
Tori, thank you so much. Wow, Tom, that was amazing. Tori had such amazing things to say about the TKTS booth, Broadway as a whole, and again, the partnership that you guys do. So, I know we just kind of talked about it for a second, but how influential has it been for you professionally, and again, your organization, to work with Tori and her team?
So first off, TDF does fantastic work, just with education, with making Broadway accessible, with developing and cultivating the next generation of Broadway viewers. So really, really, really phenomenal work by a phenomenal group of mission-driven people, and I think that you hit the nail on the head. Amazing. TDF is amazing. Tori is amazing, and the work that they do is amazing.
Yeah, guys, so please come down to Times Square, check out the TKTS booth, check out the TKTS app, find some shows you want to see. You're going to see shows you may not have ever heard of, you may never have experienced. We talked about the great shows from some of these great African-American playwrights that are new to Broadway. Come check out those shows. Support the theaters overall. It's so important to Times Square. It's so important to this city. And as my friend Anthony Melchiori says, this country is back when Broadway is back. So now the country as a whole is coming back, especially with international tourism coming back starting in November, which we're going to talk about next month, Tom. But something else I want to kind of tease a little bit. A great thing that you guys are going to be doing, we're going to talk about it in depth in November, is the Community First Recharging Station, where you guys are going to set up some shop to help some of the most vulnerable people of Times Square and of New York City. So I'm not going to give too much away, but can you give us a little bit of a brief detail about it?
So first off, I'm very proud of this initiatives that we're doing with Community First. I truly believe that as a society, as a neighborhood, as people, we are going to be judged by the way we treat those less fortunate, and we're trying to find ways to help those who are in need in Times Square.
No, I love it. I love it. And of course, guys, you can always check out the community services booth that we've talked about in previous shows to help you get around Times Square. Of course, check out the Report It app. Make sure that you guys are helping Tom and his team keep Times Square safe and running smoothly. So if you see an overflowing trash can, a street light's out, a curb is broken, get on that Report It app, report it to Tom and his team. They're going to take care of it. And if they can't take care of it, they're going to reach out to the people that can. So a very important app. Again, being a large community here in Times Square is the way that you guys can help Tom and his team keep that community thriving. So Tom, what an amazing episode this was. I really enjoyed Tori's conversation.
Yes.
It was really in-depth. I learned something about TKTS. Again, it's a thing that I've used in the past. We got to talk about the Red Steps a little bit. We have a theme for another show sometime down the road talking about the importance of these amazing steps to our left, which has become iconic to the central part of Times Square. But guys, listen, You guys need to know more about Times Square than just once a month. Yeah, we're talking about some of the great things happening here, but things are happening all the time. Things are changing all the time. So make sure you check out the website of the Times Square Alliance, tsq.org. Make sure you're liking, subscribing, hitting the bell on YouTube to all the various channels that the Times Square Alliance has on social media. So that can be found by searching the Times Square Alliance on YouTube or going to all the other social channels, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, Times Square NYC. Get up-to-date details of what is happening in Times Square. Of course, follow this show, whether it's on the YouTube channel, on the Times Square Alliance page, or the audio versions on Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon. We are literally anywhere and everywhere you get your podcast. So there's no reason you can't check out the show, see what's happening, learn what's happening, so that when you come to Times Square, you can have the best possible experience. So, Tom, any final words before we sign off on such an amazing episode?
No, this was truly a great show, and please, if you're in Times Square, please reach out to us. We want to know how your experience was, and we want to give you a great experience.
All right, Tom. Well, of course, yes, guys, thank you very, very much for joining us here. Of course, this is the Times Square Today podcast, the official podcast of the Times Square Alliance. For my co-host, Tom Harris, I am Dave Vignana. We will see you next month.